Hi, Anchorway Church, Pastor David here, and this is another midweek encouragement. Last Sunday, we talked about the spiritual discipline of Sabbath. Now, what is Sabbath? Well, it's just a day set aside by the Lord. He's made it holy. He's set it apart, a day for rest. And so what does rest mean? Well, simply, it just means to cease, to pause, to stop, to actually pump the brakes in your life and to detach yourself from your work and your striving and really the rest of your week to actually rest and rejuvenate and restore your weary souls. And so how do we do that? Well, we gave some practical ways to do that in the sermon. I would encourage you to go back and look at that sermon from this last Sunday. But I think before we can actually rest, we have to position our hearts to be able to rest. A.W. Tozer says this, there is a restlessness within us that cannot be satisfied until we fully rest in God. So even if you pause, even if you stop working, you might not be able to stop your brain from racing. You might not be able to stop your anxious heart from continually nagging at you. And this is what we're going to kind of focus on right now is how do we first try to settle and calm our spirit as we enter into our Sabbath. This is where I think we should start practically, is begin to practice things in our life that help calm and settle our restless hearts that maybe we're bringing into our Sabbath from our work week and all of that. So how do we do that? Well, we talked about this on Sunday, but Jesus kind of promises us that his burden is light, that his yoke is light for us. And this is what he invites us into in Matthew 11, verse 28. He says, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." So how do we do this practically? I think this is our starting point if we want to actually rest on Sabbath, is to first learn how to rest in Christ. And so Peter talks about this in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7. He says this, well, this is starting in verse 6. "Humble yourself, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that at the proper time he may exalt you." Verse 7, "Casting all your anxieties on him because he cares for you." So this is my encouragement for you this week. I hope that you have a Sabbath day on your calendar for this week. Maybe it's Saturday, maybe it's Sunday, but some day that is set aside for this week in which you are going to cease, you are going to stop, you are going to rest. I hope that you've prepared that day on your calendar. And this is what I would encourage you to do to start that Sabbath day, is to practice what Peter is talking about here, to practice casting all of your anxieties onto the Lord because he cares for you, because he cares for you. In fact, our God invites us not to ignore our anxiety, not to ignore all the burdens in our life, all the stresses in our life, but he invites us to actually cast them, to heave them off of ourselves and onto him. He invites us to do that. So how can we do that? Well, there's a couple ways you can do it. I would invite you to start your Sabbath day by praying through your worries, by praying through your anxieties, by naming them out loud and saying, God, this is just taking up space in my head rent-free, right? This is what's circling around in my mind. I can't let it go. God, I give this over to you on this Sabbath morning. You could journal out all those things. Writing them on paper can be a powerful thing. And then right at the end of that journal entry, just say, God, I give this over to you. God, these are all yours now. We talked about this a few weeks ago, but it was in our Surrender and Trust message. We're going to put together a little clip of just the end of that, but I encouraged us to practice a palms up prayer. And really, it's just this posture of prayer in which we give all of our burdens, our anxieties, all the things that we're trying to grasp for control in our life, that we open them up and we give them up to the Lord so that we can receive what he has for us. These are great ways to start your Sabbath. It postures your heart to just sit in the Lord's presence and to receive all that he has for you on that day of rest. So on your day of rest, which is on your calendar. It's all prepped. I would encourage you to start your day with this, either on your own, with friends, with family, with a spouse, to practice heaving your burdens onto the Lord so that you can start by calming your spirit and setting the tone for the rest of your Sabbath. So I hope this was encouraging and challenging. That was from 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 6 and 7. So we'll see you on this Sunday.